All right. Hello, everyone. I am so happy to be here with you today. I am Kira Hammond from Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. I am one part of the team that is behind the Early Childhood Credential Level 5 to Professional Educator License Bridge project. And our intercession is entitled, I Need a Pell and Have a Level 5. What can I do? I need to get a better sense of why you have come here today to this session to ensure that I'm going to provide an hour that is meaningful for you. So let me go ahead and advance. I would like to know your experiences. When we're talking Pell, we're talking about a professional educator license. And when we're talking that level 5, what we're referencing is that Gateway's level 5 or that level 5 with a bachelor's, but without licensure. How many of you have experienced a candidate, a student coming to you with that premise? I need a Pell and I have a bachelor's and a 5. How do I get there? Would you either put a reaction on your screen, throw it in the chat, or turn your camera on and nod your head? How many people are in my boat and have heard that? I'm looking around the room and yeah, I'm seeing a lot of hands, like your reactions pop up. This is something that definitely has been what we've been hearing in the field of early ed for some time, where we know we have been graduating with bachelor's candidates that are at that level 5, going out into the workforce and being able to be amazing educators for young children, but not having that gateway piece of when I say gateway, I mean like that door opened of that professional educator license. And this is the premise that is this what this presentation is all about. So let me share, and I apologize, my animations are off track here, but let me give a little bit of the background that led to the launch of this project in the last year. That coming out of our state and national teacher shortage, and specifically within our field of early ed, and recognizing that there have been traditionally many barriers to access for educators in our field, we saw coming out of a thriving plan, our Illinois strategic plan for early education, the Early Childhood Access Consortium for Equity, which has had many different ripples. If you at your institution have felt a ripple from the ECACE, will you please put a reaction on the screen or in the chat? Are you feeling a ripple at your institution from the consortium? Anybody in this room with me? Dawn. I appreciate that emoji, Dawn Munson. I am betting that many of you feel the same as Dawn up at Elgin. Yeah, we have as well at my institution, SIUE. One arm of those ripples, though, was funding from the PDG 5 B5 grant that was funneled through the Governor's Office of Early Childhood Education to INCRA to take a look at this dilemma that we have all faced, where we have graduates who have that level 5 bachelor's, but need to get access to that professional educator license. And so from that premise, the idea of the bridge surfaced. And truly, this idea of creating a seamless walkway that one could take from that level 5 to the Pell was the goal of the overarching project. So, let me tell you a little bit more about what this project looked like. This was not even 1 year project, starting in the spring of 21, really launching in the summer of 21, and the bulk of the work taking place in fall 21, which is such a feat for faculty who were a part of this project and state leaders related to the project as well. So starting off, I want to give credit to all of our various players that were a part of the project. First giving credit to the Governor's Office of Early Childhood Education, Early Childhood Development, who funneled those grant monies to INCRA. INCRA then hired on and brought on a core team of individuals, and I want to give everyone credit who is on that core team and each of our task forces. So I was a part of that core team with Dr. Nancy Latham. Many of you know Nancy Latham. She is the Associate Dean of the College of Ed and Executive Director of the Director of the Council on Teacher Ed at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Additionally, on our core team, we brought along Dr. Tiffany Fries, who's actually presenting at this same time in another session. Tiffany at the time was working with the competency-based education network. She is now with Quilts, but she was brought on as a third consultant to provide national expertise in competency-based curricular design and implementation. This core team then worked together with a leadership team. I want to give credit to our leadership representation. We had representatives from ISB, from the Illinois Community College Board, from IBHE, and the Governor's Office of Early Ed. And additionally, we had the pleasure of working with the Bridge Task Force, which was made up of faculty from 15, let me count my schools correctly here, 15 different universities with 23 different faculty who were interested in helping us create this bridge, this pathway for moving people from that Gateways Level 5 to the Pell. So I have to give credit where credit is due. I see that Ina has joined us, Ina Dolchenko. Girl, you know this. I told Julia Ock when she came in here, Julia from Quincy, that we are sharing in this session what you already know from having been a part of the project. So if you would like to attend another session right now, I will not be offended if you jump out and go to another breakout room. But with this representation, these faculty members came and joined a part of our core and leadership team to take stock of this. This project had many different facets, but primarily our focus was finding out this possible solution of this pathway, specifically looking at what standards or competency gaps it would take to get someone from the level 5 credential with the competencies of that level 5 to the competencies or standards of the Illinois Professional Educator License, and especially focused on that pre-K to second grade, knowing that the Gateways Level 5 would have given a lot of experience working out in the field with children birth to age 5. What specifically would we need to look at for pre-K to second? Additionally, the project was looking at what curricular support materials could best address if there were any gaps or any areas that would enhance what people were coming in with that level 5 to get to the Pell. And then what state licensure requirements might we need to either create a smoother road to, or lift barriers related to them, such as the specific general education requirements in rule, the passage of the content test, the successful completion of the EdTPA, and how might that look for someone if they were coming from that level 5 to the Pell. And so with those three big premises, we outlined 5 major goals, and I want to give you just a kind of a brief. Oh man, this was a fast pace. So this is going to be a fast paced overview of the steps and the goals of this project. The first goal was to establish these teams. So our core team put together calls out to institutions who were offering that Gateways Level 5 and offering that early childhood professional educator license to be a part of the project. We had informational sessions in the summer, and then that Bridge Task Force that I mentioned in the last slide, those universities had faculty member who participated in the fall work, which was really heavy hit from August of 2001, September 2021 to December. So very fast-paced work. Our next major goal was to conduct this gap analysis to identify where were there similarities and where were there differences between the credential and competencies of that Gateways Level 5 credential and the standards or competencies for the professional educator license, and to identify if there were any missing competencies. Like if there is something that if you finish that level 5, you weren't going to have if you hadn't taken coursework related to the Pell. What is very interesting here that I have to make note of is that while we are all familiar in this room with the Gateways Level 5 credential and the competencies related to that, what you may not be as aware of is that the professional educator standards that were signed into law in 2013 have actually been going through a revision state since 2019. So what our teams analyzed, it was not those old professional educator standards, because those have all been revised at this point and are ready to be moving into rule this spring. What those look like are the Illinois Professional Educator competencies / standards. These are the set of standards that are replacing the old Illinois professional teaching standards. The work related to this began in 2019. And like I said, these standards are now at a place of going before the board, the SEPLV board in April, and then moving into rule this spring. Additionally, these updated standards took stock of the social emotional teaching standards and other national standard sets, including InTask. Why I have this slash or cross off is that up until December of 2021, these new updated Illinois professional standards were referred to as the competencies, and that code name was IPEC with a C. But as of January 2022, that has been changed, which, our state is constantly evolving and changing. These new standards, as they are going before SEPLB, are now going to be referred to as standards instead of competencies. But what is interesting about them is they are written as competencies. So written in a very similar way to the Gateways Level 5. So I have to be upfront. Yep, they are the IPES. I struggle with saying that because I've said IPEC for the last 3 years, but IPES. So with that being said, we had a big goal of conducting that analysis. New Illinois professional teaching standards with the Gateways Level 5 competencies. Additionally, we then had this goal that once we had done that analysis, we would develop modules and assessments and instructional resources for what could address those missing competencies. This was the big goal, was to create resources that faculties of institutions of higher education could use to create programs where you would address those missing competencies. And then look at those licensure requirements, knowing that those are not related to competencies, but sit outside of it, such as the early childhood content test, the EdTPA performance assessment during student teaching, and those general education requirements specifically. Finally, one of our big goals was to deliver this by the end of December 2021 in a lovely package to our governor's office and to INCRA, and to be able to present this at the Higher Education Forum with actual resources and recommendations for what could change within policy. And so I am so excited to share with you that this work was fast-paced, and it is now done. Well, almost done. I'll tell you that in a second. But for the most part, done, which is very exciting. We have met all of these goals. What I want to really point out is through these steps, step 2, 3, and 4, and I would argue into step 5, our faculty team members met on a weekly basis in the fall semester, which was a huge time commitment to share their knowledge, their expertise, their skills, and their actual teaching resources. So I just want to pause in the room. I know that I am amongst faculty members where you might share your teaching resources with your colleague down the hall, but when do you have the chance to talk craft in a really meaningful way about your teaching with faculty across the state? That has been a huge benefit that is not fully represented in our step 5 delivering these deliverables, but I would have to really acknowledge the resources that have been created out of this project were curated by faculty really talking about their passions, talking about their content areas, their interest areas, and that has been just absolutely wonderful to be a part of and to witness because we don't see that so often in the field of education or higher education specifically. So then let me talk about the outcomes, because the big purpose of this session today was to give you the materials to tell you what has come of this work. And so big outcomes are this. We analyzed as a team the 54 proposed IPEC/IPES as of yesterday, IPES standards, those professional educator standards, against the 56 G5 competencies. So task force teams were created from those institutions to analyze. We had multi-step analysis for where there's crossover, where the Pell expectation stood out from the Gateways expectation in that level 5. And from that, we identified 17 of these Pell competencies that were not fully aligned, and 6 that really needed to be strengthened for a focus on kindergarten to second grade skills, knowledge and skills, with the understanding that really getting into those content areas specifically, and also considering some of those professionalism pieces for public and private school settings, and collaboration components there as well. Of these, we developed 23 total bridge competencies. From these 17 and 6 that needed to be strengthened, we came up with 23. So from these 23 bridge competencies that would link together the Gateways Level 5 to the Pell 54, we have developed these learning journeys. And I need to correct this slide right now because it's actually 6. Oh my goodness gracious. Let me change the slide in a moment. That is not okay. Here we go. That should say 6. 6 altogether. Boom and a bang. Here we go. Let me bring it back up big so you can see it. 6 learning journeys, which a learning journey is considered in layman's terms a course. It could be. It could be a course. Learning journeys is a lovely way to think about packaging a course with the instruction and assessments and resources as a part of it. So 6 learning journeys or courses that include modules and module outlines created by instructional designers with our CBEN, our National Competency-Based Education Network instructional designers. In those modules that were formatted by the instructional designers and sourced by our faculty members, they include topics and assessments that cover content for teaching those 23 bridge competencies, which tended to fall under content areas specific to literacy, mathematics, science, social studies, and then those professional education components of instructional planning and assessment overall, and professionalism and collaboration. These creations can be used for synchronous, asynchronous, and face-to-face course designs, which provide a nimbleness or possibility for how the content is used. That is a very big deliverable, which I'm happy to share, and I'm going to show you those pieces in a second. Additionally, one of our big outcomes was a set of 11 policy and practice related recommendations. These recommendations were primarily targeting ISB, our State Board of Education, which I'll talk through in a second, as well as ILTS and the content test. The recommendations also were directed for gateways. So what I would love to share with you for the remainder of our session is these outcomes specifically. Are there any questions so far about the overall project, or are you just excited to see what was created? Like I am excited to share. If you have questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. Tammy's going to be helping me to see those, and I'm looking at that as well. So feel free to throw those in. Let's get into then the good stuff, the learning journeys and the toolboxes. So what we have created are 6 different learning journeys, which serve as full courses, if you are to use it in such a way, related to these 6 big domains. When we analyzed those 23 bridge competencies, we realized that there were areas on top of that level 5 specifically related to that pre-K, public pre-K to 2nd grade setting for these 6 big domains. So what we have created are resource toolboxes related to these. Inside of these learning journey toolbox folders, you will find an entire course prepared, which is quite exciting, an entire learning journey where faculty members came together to brainstorm what are the big standards, what are the big ideas, and what are the best ways for teaching those big ideas and the pedagogy of them within each of these domains. And they sequenced out content related to that. Each of our teams approached that work a little bit differently related to that domain. Each one has then a certain number of modules that have been created to work their way through that content that is fully meeting those bridge competencies. And I just have to pause here to say, I don't know about you all, but when we get science folks in a room, we tend to share our similar sort of mindsets about science. When we get math in the room, we can tend to share similar sentiments about math. Social studies pretty similarly, but literacy, oh man, we have a lot of perspectives about how we should teach children to read and write and speak and listen. Each of these teams coming to consensus with faculty across the state about what is the content that would best represent these bridge competencies and the pedagogy of how to teach it was really, really tremendous. Really tremendous. Additionally, we are in the process of putting together the 2 toolboxes, which are soon to be released, related to the EdTPA guidance for that professional licensure requirement, as well as test taking skills and content test support. There will be 2 additional toolboxes that will be released through Gateways within the next month and a half. So those 2 are going to be posted very soon. But right now, Gateways is hosting these, so I want to show you these wonderful resources. And let me just share with you what the modules look like. So as I said, these were created by faculty members across the state, along with instructional designers from CBEN, our national partner. Each of these learning journeys is situated by that course, and the folders are set up in that way. The folders are housed through Google Drive. They are owned by INCRA and managed by INCRA, but they are sourced on a Google Drive folder that you have to be invited to access, which I'm going to get your name and email address by the end of this session so we can invite you. But when you are in there, which we're going to see in a second, they're going to be situated by the course itself. Each of the learning journey modules provides a course description and overview within the first module of that journey. It is outlined in a very consistent way, and each of the first modules gives an overview of what that entire learning journey or course looks like. Additionally, the modules include consistently what bridge competencies are being addressed, meaningful, rigorous content, formative assessments that could be considered your turn activities that are in-class activities that could be completed asynchronously with sample responses, or synchronously or face-to-face if you were to adapt it and use them face-to-face, which is so exciting. But there are assessments built in that are more formative, like your turn activities, and ones that are more summative in nature, especially towards the final module of any of the journeys, which tend to result in application level assessments where students are actually creating instruction related to that content. There are possible discussion prompts, instructor tips, and connections to all sorts of components, because these connections to these links are all active with terms of use outlined. These modules are going to be updated and monitored so that those links stay current. But right now, there are so many resources that are shared within these. Yeah, Tony, I'm going to answer your question. I'm seeing it in the chat from Tammy. I'm going to answer your question as we get towards the end and we talk about the recommendations, because that very much connects to recommendations. Before we look at the recommendations, let's actually get into the modules themselves. So right now, I'm going to first just share what the modules look like, and then I'm going to share a form in chat so that you can get signed up to see them. Let me jump to the modules, and then I'll show you where you can find our report. So we are going to invite you to the ECE 5 Pell Bridge modules. And when you are invited, you are going to share with us an email address that you prefer to use with Google. Some of us prefer to use our work email. Some of us prefer to use a personal email. But whatever email address you share with us, you will have access to these modules through your shared drives. Shared drives. Please know that the link to these is not, here I'm going to sign it in ASL, it is not embedded on the Gateways website. These are for faculty who are interested in using them to provide the respect to those who have created these tools. We want to make sure that these aren't out there for general public use, but instead for faculty who are interested in using them. You being here in this session today, we would love to invite you to participate and join them. But when you do, this is what you're going to see. It's going to be in your shared drive section. And when you click on the modules, it's going to bring up a page that looks like this. Please know that Google is always going to suggest files that are within a folder. Do not pay attention to those. Instead, look at what the actual folders are, because these are our learning journeys or courses that are prepared for you all. Google gives you the option to see them as folders like this, where they're horizontal, or to see them as a list like this, either one works. I want to zoom into one example specifically from science. So I'm going to pull up the science subfolder. This is what would link if you had clicked on the file for science. In this, you see a similar structure that you will see in any of the learning journey folders. You will have lesson plan forms and rubrics. That's going to relate to any of the activities that are embedded within the modules. Those are the resources for them. You're also going to see an acknowledgements document. This acknowledgements document, in my opinion, is just so wonderful to see which of your colleagues across the state helped to put this together. And I apologize, I didn't have this already pulled up, but I just want to share what this looks like because it will be the same across. You will get a chance to see. If you have follow-up questions related to that content, you have the information of who helped to create that to direct any of those questions. Okay, so let me go back out of acknowledgements and I will answer your question in a quick second. Additionally, then we have the science modules laid out. Notice that they will follow a similar pattern of saying the domain, the module, and the order. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Science has 5 modules to complete to finish this course or learning journey. I want to zoom into one of the modules specifically so that you can see how they are structured. The first module, as I said in the slides, is always going to be set up with an overview of the entire journey from the start. There will be key directions at the top, and then a flow that explains about the course. Information that explains about the course. Let me zoom in and let me blow up my screen so you can see a little bit bigger here. This note will be on the top of every one of the module documents because this was created and formatted, well, sourced by our faculty, but then formatted by our instructional designers, where they have really used intentional embedding of font and color and bolding, I guess we might say. Anytime that you're seeing these kind of instructions for ID that are in italics, that's intended for you as to take back to your institution to share with your instructional designers if you are wanting to take these modules and put them into asynchronous content at your institution. But I see this for me as a faculty member. If I'm going to come and use some of these resources that are within this, I would be pulling that italics as the teacher instructions as well, or instructor instructions as well. Notes to the instructional designer, I would / or educator are indicated in red, and then sample responses, especially for those your turn activities, will be in green below. So these are very long documents because they are really covering the content that would fit within that course. As I mentioned earlier, every single one of them will outline which of the bridge competencies are being addressed. They will all provide kind of an outline of how that module will go, or if they're the first one, an overview. And then they'll follow a really consistent pattern of text, activity, text, a video, text, a link, text, and application. It's giving you that content and that application of these different domain areas. So here's an example of a your turn activity. Think about science experiences you've had, and here's a possible sample response of what that might look like. I want to zoom in to share with you the final module, just so you can see that where a summative assessment might really fall in. These summative assessments are built in the final assessments, and they happen almost at the very end. And as you can see, this is a 36-page document with all the content related to engineering, tech, and the application of science, if you are a science person. But I'm going to scroll down to page 33. I apologize for the bouncing around screen. I know that it's tough to look at. Here we go. Activity page, your turn, activity mini unit summative assessment. At this point, it would outline a more summative assessment for demonstrating knowledge of those bridge competencies at the end. So there's preparation for that assessment, additionally, directions, and then links to what you find in the drive folder of the resources for this content area. And then congratulations, you have completed this. So this is what the modules look like. I want to close back out of these. And what I would like to do is share this Google form with you. Let me actually do it this way. I'm going to share this form in the chat. I would love for you to copy the link. Will you please revise this document with your name if you would like to be added to that drive folder to get access to those resources? And then let me jump back into the PowerPoint real quick. So different ways to use those resources. Oh gosh. One, get access. Get into there and start looking at these tools that have been put together. What we are recommending is that these tools could be used to enhance models and pathways that already exist at your institution. The content that has been curated and put together is absolutely wonderful. And you might find that in these bridge resources, there is content and activities that you could use in your current programs that would really benefit your current programs, because they're really outlining content and pedagogy for these areas in ways that could be used asynchronously, synchronously, in a wonderful way. Where this could be used for developing your own bridge program, I want to talk about the recommendations before I give you kind of more specific ways to use the tools for that. I want to answer Enid's question here over in the chat. She says, before the modules got released, was there a pilot implementation? Have they been implemented somewhere? What are the results of validity and reliability? That is a fantastic question. No, they have not. No, they have not been implemented somewhere. We are taking back to INCRA the charge to secure funds that we could pilot these out related to competencies moving ahead in the recommendations. It would not make sense that we would need to have that pilot right now. I'm saying like right now, April. But this is a wonderful next step for us to be doing for the fall. So, pay attention. I'm hoping that we will have information about possible pilots of what this could look like into the next year. It does not mean that we should not be able to access the resources that have been created at this point. And so I want to be able to share those resources now. And then Tammy shares question from Melissa Johnson, assuming they only want to provide access for these modules are 4 years, correct? Melissa, I was asked to present this at the Higher Ed Forum with the understanding that we would have all sorts of members represented, that I would be comfortable with sharing the resources 100% with faculty that are a part of this room, where the recommendations related to that bachelor's piece that I'm going to share in a second may not apply to you. The benefit of these resources for the Gateways community, I think could definitely be shared. So feel free to add your name on there. I will be sharing that list with Stephanie Helmer from INCRA, who is the person at INCRA who is providing access for faculty members to get to this. No, I think that this is wonderful. And would you all want to pilot it? And I have to say, so, unmute yourself and share where you are, and then share if you'd be interested in piloting.
Yes, we will be interested in piloting. That's why I posted the question. Right now, we are working on phase 2 for ITC grant, and it will end in September. But as soon as you get information for piloting, please share with us. We will be happy to do it. We want to be a part.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, you guys at Chicago State are just creating so many amazing pathways. And so I'm so happy to hear that, Ina, and I will take that back. We need this. And yes, Dawn, yes, we need the Pell. This is the way for our fives to get to that Pell. So let's talk recommendations, because this is where it really starts to matter, if we can see these resources for the full purpose that they were set up to create. So as I mentioned earlier, one of our big goals was to be able to put together recommendations. We have all of this amazing think tank in one room. What do we see related to these bridge competencies as barriers that would prevent someone from being able to actually complete this bridge? So here are the recommendations that came out of this. We have recommendations related to actually creating this bridge endorsement and writing it into rule. And I'll share those specifics in a second. We have information and recommendations for making changes to licensure testing requirements. Oh, well, we're hoping those things come to play for all of us, as well as recommendations for gateways related to especially housing these resources and operationalizing them. So specifically related to putting this bridge endorsement into administrative rule, here are the recommendations that surface from that. First and foremost, to move these 23 identified G5 bridge competencies into rule by really defining what those competencies were that we have outlined from the outcomes of this work, and requiring for IHEs that are offering this bridge program from the Gateways 5 to the Pell to be addressing those specific competencies. And right now, the status of this, oh no, Sharkeisha, hold on, y'all, I'm gonna pause what I'm doing because Sharkeisha says that the link doesn't work. And Sharkeisha, I am betting that I just messed up providing access. So hold on a second and let me change. I said change to anybody with a link. Oh, I've set you all as viewers. Here we go. I'll make you an editor and that makes it easy enough. Let me share it one more time. It should just update in the chat, but if you have just joined, let me put it right back in the chat again. There we go. There's that sign up to get to the folder. And let's talk about you want to make this happen. What is the status of this right now? The project wrapped up at the end of December. The report was put together at the very beginning of January of this year. And currently we are sitting in wait mode related to this recommendation. We have word that the Illinois Professional Educator Standards, the Pell update, the Pell standard update is going before CEPLB in April, our state board that would approve that. And then it will be moving into rules. Now, you all know how long administrative rules happens. That's going to be months before that makes it all the way to rules. Because this bridge work is built on top of those new standards, we cannot move ahead with moving the bridge project into rule until those Illinois Professional Educator Standards have been written into rule. So this relates to Ina's question about the testing and being able to actually pilot this with some institutions. That would need to happen closer to when the Illinois Professional Educator Standards make it through rule for us to then push this to rule and get those pilots going. Currently, it's not something that you can have on your books, but it is something that you can start thinking about because it's on the horizon, which is quite exciting. Other recommendations that I think are going to help with some of the questions that are surfacing are related to ISB. And I apologize, I think that my ears are dying here. So let me charge these and move you on to my screen. All right, thumbs up, you can hear me speak. Thank you, Don. Is one of our big recommendations relates to the general education requirements. We know that a person with a Gateways Level 5 will have finished a bachelor's. We are recommending that with this moving into rule, it is specifically written to approve that bachelor's gen ed sequence as opposed to requiring new general education courses for the early childhood Pell to get to that professional educator license. This is going to be huge when that goes through. We are also writing into that rule the requirement that it's a minimum of an 18-hour design aligned to those 23 identified competencies, those bridge competencies. But as we say that, there may be additional courses such as clinical experiences, which is our next recommendation, but there at least be a minimum of 18 hours. And if you think back to the learning journey modules, we have 6. Think of that as 6 courses, 6 3-hour courses, and 18-hour endorsement with possibly an additional added on is the package that we're hoping to be able to promote. We have written into that rule component the requirement with the bridge that there be a clinical or student teaching experience, and that being in a PK-2 classroom under the mentoring of a licensed teacher or G5 credentialed teacher. How an institution of higher ed sees that clinical, whether being tapped or attached to one of the courses or sitting as an additional course, would be up to the institution of higher ed. That is not prescribed by us. But one of the big requirements that we are recommending, and not requirements, but recommendations, is that ISB allow the use of coursework that they have used towards that bachelor's level 5 credential, that the courses that they take be able to apply to the expectation of a professional education requirement of 32 hours. They finished a bachelor's. They don't need another bachelor's. And that is what people have had to do to this point, is in a whole nother bachelor's. So we are really excited. Like I said, right now, all 5 of these recommendations are on hold because we have to get the Illinois Professional Educator Standards to rule first, because this is built on the analysis of those standards. But I would expect to see this moving ahead within the next calendar year, which in higher ed, everything takes forever. So that's not a bad thing. While we want this now, it's not a bad thing to say it's going to be in a year. Here are our recommendations for testing. Oh, I hope I get some snaps in the room because this is what we are hoping. We are charging that ISB hold a study to look at content test data from the last 15 years. We know across all of us who are moving candidates to licensure that content test has been a huge barrier. That we have just tremendous resources within our faculty team on our Bridge task force related to looking at this, specifically Kathy Main at the University of Illinois Chicago, who really helped to write our recommendations to put forth to ISB that we need to look at this more closely. There are some serious problems within our passage rates in the last 15 years, and to take a better look at that, and that they resolve the findings that they have already been holding a study related to the Pearson analysis of these bank questions. So that is something that was happening outside of our project, but we are promoting and really recommending to ISB to put in the changes related to that external study, that it would help us get a better sense of what's been a barrier within this content test passing or passage rates. We are recommending that ISB immediately move toward allowing super scoring on the ECE content test, which would allow a candidate to keep their high scores from any one part the next time they take it, as opposed to starting off from scratch. This is a recommendation that is not singular to our project. It is surfaced in other projects across the state, but we felt that it was important to resound that message so ISB hears it again. This is an issue that we need to address. And that state agencies advocate for the funding for this. Institutions have been bootstrapping supports for their candidates to take and retake, especially our non-traditional students who are coming from that incumbent workforce that we have traditionally seen really struggle with this content test, and the need for us to be able to provide the financial support, the coaching that it would take to get this passed, and then vouchers to pay for it. If you're not aware, that is $125 every time a candidate takes that test. And like I said, you don't get to take your scores with you. And there are a lot of issues within it. So we're hoping that these recommendations will move forward. As of this point, ISB is sitting quiet related to all of these. I put forward the question to Jason again yesterday, and we are hoping that in the next 2 weeks, we are getting back some good information about these licensure testing recommendations. Let me share out the gateways recommendations, which I think are the most exciting for our partnership with INCRA, but then just, providing that easy access for individuals who would like to use this work. So Gateways is operationalizing the pathway for us, and we have charged Gateways to host and disseminate these learning journeys. And here I'm going to change my language again, because again, we are not offering you 5, we are offering 6. This was a change over at the final stage of our project, was to fully have that as 6. So here we go. 6, the 6 G5 learning journeys for the IHEs, that these bridge learning journeys would be then housed on Gateway's website and through Gateways to have access to them. And that ISB have that responsibility every 3 years of that review, with the understanding that your turn activities may go out of mode, that not be so much in style. There may be something that's more engaging. Links may fall out of use. And so making sure that what is provided in there is actually accessible and fully usable for institutions as needed. So here are our 11. There are some big recommendations I have for this. First and foremost is get access to the toolbox folders. Get access to it. That's the one thing that we can control right now as a deliverable from this project, is to get in there and actually play with the resources that are there. What we're so excited about is just that creation of amazing content, that content has been credited. And we would ask that if you are using content from those resources, that you credit that amazing acknowledgement document, and the amazing educators and instructional designers who put those modules together. But you get access to that and start thinking through it.
Additionally, we want you to stay current with what's going on related to the pathway. So if you've signed up on that list, Stephanie Helmer at INCRA is going to be curating a list for Nancy and me to have that as we get updates related to recommendations moving ahead, such as this going to administrative rule, this going to a pilot, this moving ahead with the content test recommendations, that we would have a listserv started of those who are interested to hear what that is. So we really encourage you to stay current with the bridge pathway as it gets written into code. And know that, again, that's probably not going to be until the next year, but that gives us time to create programs if we are creating those, because what we're really encouraging is programs to consider. Ina shared that at Chicago State, they're really excited to be able to offer this as an endorsement, and that we think about putting this package together. You have a wonderful start with 6 created modules, actual course modules set up that you could use to create that pathway. And once it's written into rule, you get those students in and you start that program, which would be helping to answer the dilemma of, I have the level 5, I need to get to the Pell. So I am so excited to share all of this with you, as you can see, but I want to open up to answer any questions that are out in the room and make sure that I have fully addressed the questions that are over here in the chat. On the slide, I've shared my contact information at SIUE, and then my co-core team member, Nancy Latham, my colleague and dear friend, and her email address at UIUC, and she was very sorry to not be able to attend today. So Tony, I want to just start by saying, you asked over in the chat, is it possible for programs to align the 23 competencies to their own course content and skills and use that as a bridge to the Pell? Tony, that is a fantastic question. And the answer is fully resounding yes. I'm going to sign it on the screen. Yes, girl. You can. Once this is written into rule, you have the ability to create those 18 hours if you are addressing those bridge competencies, as that will be written into the rule. And that's going to be ISB manning that and approving that. ISB has set up a fast track with the endorsements. I highlighted that from our report, and I want to share the link to the report in just a second. A fast track option is currently in place for those seeking licensure who have a bachelor's degree. And that is actually something that Jason mentioned yesterday in his ISB report. They're really trying to make a faster path for institutions of higher ed to get those programs through. But right now, you would be creating that and then having it ready, because it's not in rule yet. So that would give institutions time, Tony, knowing that this is on the horizon. I'm going to share the link to the report, which outlines those 23 competencies, so you would see what those are and get a sense of how we've packaged it, if that would fit with yours. The hope was that we just have found it so problematic of like, hey, here's this way that you can do it. It's in rule. Now, everybody go do it on your own time in your free space and do the rest of your life at the same time, as we all have with our consortium programs. Sorry, that's off to the side. With that being said, what we're hoping is that we have created something that institutions could use, whether you use all of the learning journeys, whether you tap in and use one part of them. We just hope that this has been a tremendous use of the funds, those PDG B5 funds, to be able to curate content so that it wouldn't be a burden on institutions of higher ed, that when this goes to rule, you would be saying, oh my gosh, now we have to think about how are we backwards mapping programs that we've already, a program we already have or courses we already have. But Tony, if people want to do that on the front end or even during that, yeah. So Sandy, your question about the ends, yes, I only have one N, but I really have 2 N's in my name. Sandy asks if my email only has 1 N on the screen. It does. So please know that that is not how my name is spelled, but that is how SIUE has decided for my ULID to be. Okay, so Melissa Batchelor, were you able to see the link? You asked, does Kira want us to gain access? Yes. So I hope that that is an answer, that yes, we would love for you to get in and see them. And then Beth, I will add you. I see your email address on the chat, so I will add your email address to our list. And then let me make sure I've answered others on here. So, okay, I think that's everything from the chat. What additional questions do you have? Or what ideas do you have? I guess I have a question for all of you. What ideas do you have? What are people thinking? Yay, Beth, I see you on there. Thank you.
Well, I do want to say, Kira, in light of my question, that I really think it's amazing that you have created entire courses, entire pathways for institutions to use with their students. Just coming up with the competencies would have been more than enough, but the curriculum modules that you've created are just phenomenal. So, kudos to you and to your team. The
Well,
work is just incredible.
that is so, I am not going to take, I will take some organizational credit. It's like, oh gosh, Kira, those drive folders, I killed them with the drive folders. But our faculty who jumped into this, they gave us their time and so much knowledge and skill. I am so impressed because I myself am not an expert. I'm a semi-expert on some content. I am an appreciator of all content, but to get these content experts into a space to share what they are passionate about was just tremendous, and in such a fast pace at the same time that they were fulfilling their loads and responsibilities at their institutions was tremendous. And credit to those instructional designers at CBEN who were able to package this in a just easy to digest way, and hopefully one that would speak to your instructional designers. For those of you who would think this could be a fully online program, the instructional designers that you have at your institution to be able to say, hey, here are what we want it to look like, or at least start with, that they can understand how that's written as well. Yeah, Tony, thank you so much. I really have to give my hat off to everyone who participated on this. We had a wonderful team and just tremendous support from the state. Natalie, I see you got your hands up. Go ahead and unmute yourself and share.
Okay. Again, I'll extend the kudos. This represents a tremendous body of work. So thank you very much. And thanks to all your colleagues as well. Here at SXU, we are very interested because this would definitely, I think, meet the needs of a lot of our potential future surrounding students. So what we've done is start to take, I guess, the recommendations and the existence of the learning journey modules and kind of begin to conceptualize what that would look like as a bridge program for our students to consider asynchronously. My questions are specific to sort of the timelines surrounding the potential for doing that. And that would be, I appreciate the need to first get things into administrative roles so that they can be operationalized. I know you mentioned the spring, within the next month, we can expect some movement with additional movement to be anticipated after. I know you probably can't comment on the certainty of this. I mean, do you think it's likely that things would eventually pass through and be approved?
Yes, we do. We know there is a commitment. We had ISB partners, and I'll specifically name, she's in our report, Emily Fox from ISB, Zach Allen from Governor's Office of Ed. They are committed because this is coming out of a thriving plan, our strategic plan from the Board of Higher Ed as a potential pathway. So we feel that there is definitely a commitment for it moving forward. It's just the plotting, the plotting through of moving these pieces. So as I mentioned, we know for certain that the Illinois Professional Educator Standards that have been revised, that we based our analysis off of, are going forth this month for approval and then moving into rule. That will then be, I think, the linchpin for this to be that next step. So Nancy and I are staying on with all of our partners. Joni is doing an amazing job. Joni was our representative from INCRA, Joni and Stephanie. Joni is doing an amazing job continuing to pressure our state folks to keep moving this forward, with the understanding that our agencies are fully supporting it. I want to say, Nat, within the next year. Okay. But please do not. And Tammy O'Daniel, I'm recorded right now. Y'all, you cannot come back because you know how our state works. Things just move a little bit slower. So please do not quote me on that. But April for a certainty of IPES, the Illinois Professional Educator Standards, is an awesome first step. And then please know, Nat, we are pushing. But if you were looking for your institution, not going to be a 22 start, not going to be a fall 22 start. Right. Let us think through a potential of a 23, of a 23 or beginning of 24.
That makes sense. So recently I had to present to our Board of Trustees about possible programs that we were like considering. And this was something that was on the docket because I felt it was necessary to kind of get that buy-in or get that just like highlight of what the future might look like. So I was with many fingers crossed, kind of thinking with high hopes, possibly summer or fall of 2023.
I'm going to hope that that's the case. I really am, Natalie. And I think that's wonderful because right now we are able to say with certainty that this project took place. The funding was there. The funding was put through. We have a final report. And before I let you all go, I'm going to share that link and show you where to find it. I would love for you to be able to share the report out with your trustees or within your administrators that are saying, okay, is this legitimate? Is this really happening? Currently, you have access to this report in the toolbox that is the ECE toolbox on the Gateway's website. I'll give you the direct link, but I just want to show you where you can always come back to find it. If you scroll down on the toolbox page, here are 2021 reports. This report came out at the very tail end of December 31st, 2021, but this is our bridge report, which includes all the specifics that I have glossed over today. Let me take this and throw this in the chat so you all have direct access to it. Please save this report, share it with those that are, in the know at your institution to be looking for moving things forward in the future. It's our hope that with those specifics, you can start to get a program planned so that the second that it's rule, you're able to apply, as opposed to it being rule, us then spending months and months trying to figure out how to create it.
That makes sense. And that's reassuring to hear. I did reference the bridge report and some of the outcomes and the work in progress with our BOT. So I think that went a long way to like pricking their ears up and getting this like at the forefront. I know I'm excited as well. I'm snapping,
And congrats to you, Natalie. That's a big deal to go before your board of trustees. So congrats.
I appreciate your saying that. In addition to, and I know that there's many people in the audience, I want to say that we likewise conceptualize this as being an 18-hour eventual like bridge program credit. We did build in additional opportunities or additional experiences for people to get a supervised student teaching experience for minimal credit hours, and then looked at ways to support our mentors and our coordinators to be able to do that, as well as the Ed TPA component. So it looks very promising.
Well, and so let me speak to that Ed TPA piece because I see Melissa Smith's note. Melissa, thank you for sharing this. She's sharing that in her program, the content test is really that only barrier for obtaining the Pell. Melissa, we feel so similar at SIUE for some of our candidates. That is likewise the same case. So please know that when those toolboxes are shared, it will be through that same module folder, that same link. It will be saved in the Google Drive, but it will be structured a little bit differently because they're not going to be written as instructionally designed modules. Instead, it will be a drive folder of resources with most likely an outline of how those resources could be used, with the understanding that faculty will use what they need. But I have to say, as I'm sitting on this trove, and it is a treasure trove of resources that were curated, faculty have shared amazing slide presentations. They have shared amazing practice examples they put together, and we need to get that into your hands, Melissa Smith. Like, we need to get that into the hands of people that are out there who are trying to provide continuous support for candidates completing and getting to that 240 points on the content test. So please know that I have that on my agenda, that we would have that ready by May of this year. So that will be put within the same drive, big parent folder, and it'll be more of a resource toolbox as opposed to the learning journey modules specifically within. But I'm so excited for you, Melissa. Melissa's sharing, like, it makes her consider this for students who aren't ready to work with primary students that are just going for that level 5, but then knowing that there's an option for them to come back where there just has not been. There has not been. The prospect of doing a whole nother bachelor's is formidable and just a waste of money and time. Truly. So this is, I'm hoping, just a wonderful, wonderful that for you to be able to consider for your own programs. Are there any other questions in the room? Well, then with that being said, everyone, you have my email address. I've so appreciated the opportunity to be able to chat with all of you today and get to know a little bit more about your programs through the questions that you have asked. I am certainly not the end all be all related to this bridge, but I am someone that you could tap into as a gateway to find that answer if I can't provide it myself. So please don't be a stranger, reach out as you need to. And thank you so much for coming. I hope that you enjoy the rest of the forum.
Thank you, Kira.
Thank you
Everyone,
all.
make sure you go back to the main session. We've got 3 closing keynote speakers who are going to be excellent. So have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for stopping in. So nice to see new faces and some familiar faces also.